Hey, Jesus is.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Go
Lord.
ahead.
Yeah, Peter's stepping all over me. He asked me before the pre-show to introduce him, and all right, hey man, it's your show. I'm Mike Heath, and this is Americans for Truth Lives. Thanks for tuning in to either the live show or an archived version of it. And sorry about that echo. And Peter is joining us by phone. If you're watching on video, you can see my face, but you're not going to be able to see his, and I'll let him tell you why. And Peter, take it away.
Hey, Mike. Thanks. Sorry for stepping all over you. I'm still a clod at all this, and now my friends Mike and Jared tell me I'm being a big wuss for not being on with my face. But I had some facial surgery for skin cancer, not the melanoma, basal. I had it before. Actually, I had a kind of a scary situation with my ear. I had it on my ear, and a doctor screwed up, and I ended up having to have part of my ear taken off a while ago and rebuilt. Like you've heard of the $6 million man. Maybe I was like the $600 man. Anyways, had my ear rebuilt a little bit, but now I have weak skin, and so now I had this some something done on my cheek because it came back, but it's just not a big deal. But I had to get it done. Anyways, Mike and Jared, two great Americans, are saying I'm a wuss for not being on with my Band-Aid, and it looked like I got in a street fight. But knowing the nasty gay activists, they would say, Pete LaBarbera got beat up by some gay heroes.
Yeah, but then you could use that to show how violent they are, because they are violent. So
yeah, I could make up I could be like the left. I could make up my own hate. There's not enough gay hate in the world. We got to make up our own. Now, actually, that's what the left does. They make up hate, Jared, and I'm not going to do that. But anyways, and that reminds me, there's this one gay activist. There's a lot of nasty gay activists. I'm talking the type who are just, really over the edge. And there's this guy named Joe Jervis who I don't block him, even though he's nasty to me, because we kind of have a deal where, I like to read his posts, so I don't block him on Twitter. But anyways, I still haven't formally refuted this claim. But when we had Scott Lively speak at an after banquet a number of years ago, Scott Lively, the pro-family hero, he was speaking, and there was a leftist group that put up a manifesto saying that he must go. The place, the Christian school in Arlington Heights, where our banquet was held, had 2 paver bricks thrown through the door. And anyways, this happened. And, coupling with the manifesto, it would be pretty extravagant for us to try to invent that hate crime, because we'd have to create a whole fake website. Anyways, this guy, Joe Jervis from Joe My God, typical of the lies that are out there on the other side, he still accuses us of making up this hate incident. So talk about projection. We just saw Jussie Smollett, the most notorious fake hate crime, but there are many, many others. Fake anti-gay hate hoaxes. So sometimes homosexual activists and the left, they think conservatives act like they do. I mean, they're the ones creating all the fake hate, not conservatives. And if a conservative did create fake hate, what would happen to him? He'd be run out of the conservative movement, right? We don't do those kind of things, but they do on the left. Okay, Jared, so we've got, the first thing I want to do is just some admin. There's a conference coming up. If you could pull the link up there for the Trans Ideology Conference, Jared. It's next week. It is next Saturday, March 16th, a week from Saturday, March 16th. This is Illinois Family Institute Trans Ideology Conference, Worldview Conference. You got it up there, Jared? Okay, there it is. And the speakers, I will try to be at this thing. This is a wonderful event. I want you to go if you're anywhere close to Illinois. It's only $20. You've got some wonderful speakers. Walt Heine, who is a former transsexual, wonderful story. We will be interviewing him probably many times on this show because he's just an amazing story. He went through the whole trans surgery. Can you imagine, Jared? This is a guy who actually had it removed, You know what it is? He's a man who at one time he was confused. He had this troubled childhood in which his grandmother would dress him up in a purple chiffon dress because obviously she wanted a granddaughter, I guess. And so he grew up with this alternate female persona, and he wanted to be that person in his head, and he ultimately had his body destroyed. But God redeemed him, and he's now has a website called Sex Change Regret. You could pull that up, Jared, sexchangeregret.com. Amazing story. He came out of it. Now he's telling other men, don't do this. Don't destroy your bodies. Don't pretend you're another person other than you are, because we're either born a boy or a girl. That's how it is. And so Walt has Sex Change Regret, and he's trying to warn others. He is speaking. The great Dr. Michelle Cretella is speaking. She's from a conservative pediatric group. She basically saw that the Pediatricians Organization, AAP, American Association of Pediatrics, very left-wing, so she created her alternative, or I don't know if she created it, but she is the leader in that, Dr. Michelle Cretella. She is speaking on child abuse, female erasure, and the death of all human rights. So that alone is worth the drive over there to Orland Park, Illinois. You've got the stuff on the IFI website. Go to illinoisfamily.org. It's only $20. Then you've got the afternoon sessions. You've got Denise Schick, who is had a transgender father. A very sad story, and she's going to tell it, but she has a group called Help for Families. We had her speak at an Americans for Truth event. She's wonderful. Her group is outstanding. You can recommend it to anybody who's got transgenderism in the family. So Denise Schick, and her title is The Impact on the Family, because she's experienced it, and that's who you want to hear from, people who've actually experienced this transgender phenomenon. Of course, the media love all things transgender now, just like they loved all things gay. They mainstream homosexuality. Now they're mainstreaming extreme gender confusion, transgenderism. And then the last speaker is Doug Wilson. I've never heard Doug Wilson speak. I think I've seen him on tape once. He's a great Christian man, very politically incorrect. And he's talking about sanity as insurrection. In other words, we are the counter-revolution. And Mike and I have talked about it before, but this is all a revolution, folks. When homosexual writers write about this, they call it a revolution. Jared, pull up a book on Amazon called The Gay Revolution by Lillian Faderman, Faderman. Lillian Faderman, The Gay Revolution. And you can see there, you got it, Jared? Jared is quicker than I was going to tell a joke, but we're not. Are we at the joke telling stage yet in the show yet? Okay, I was going to say Jared is quicker pulling up websites than 10 promiscuous gay men on a free bathhouse ticket. Oh my God, there's a free ticket to the bathhouse. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but he pulls up. That is our first gay joke on Americans for Truth Live. You heard it first. Yes, we dare tell a gay joke. I hope I don't get shot. I'll put on the Kevlar vest as I leave today. But we told a gay joke on Americans for Truth Live. Don't tell the thought police. The gay thought police will be knocking at my door. I'll get a visit by the FBI. And actually, I was visited. Right? That's already happened. Thanks to a person who, we're not going to mention his name, but he's a very deceitful gay activist, and he's sick to the FBI on yours truly, and I got a knock at the door, and there he was, because we dared to criticize a gay activist. Oh my goodness, what a crime. Okay, so Jared's got it there, The Gay Revolution, Lillian Faderman. When they write about this whole phenomenon in our culture, especially the last 50 years, I say Stonewall. Stonewall is the anti-cop riot at a gay bar in New York City, and they have turned this into they've romanticized it. But I call that since Stonewall. That was 50 years ago this year. It's the in-your-face part of the gay revolution. That's when they became in-your-face. And they're still in-your-face today. I mean, look at the trans revolution. Look what they're doing to Martina Navratilova. If you could pull up her, Jared. Martina Navratilova is a lesbian tennis player. And, okay.
Is that in the link?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting this show to tell you that I'm looking out my window and watching my dog do the thing that I hate when my dog does. Guess what it is, Jared? Eating crap. You look out the window and you see the dog. Don't do that. And so whenever the homosexual activists tell you, look, there's gay animals.